Good morning, family, and welcome to Guided Meditations and More. My name is Ade Richardson, and this is a daily 8 a.m. Eastern Time meditation. I've also been hosting interviews with various types of people on, with a variety of topics. If you're new to the page, if you like what we do here, if you like or follow the page, you'll get the updates and notifications. If you have any comments or questions for me, please feel free to send me a message at my inbox. And today we are having a conversation with Cecelia Waterman-Santiago, and the topic is the 4 agreements. So for those watching, please do send questions. We will appreciate it. So hello, everyone. And Cecelia will try to get to all of the questions. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't have to be on the 4 agreements. It could be politics, physics, anything you want to send in. And also just one thing, just another announcement. This Wednesday, I believe, I'm gonna be hosting another interview, and that will actually be at 11 p.m. And I just have to work out the details, but it's going to be with Professor Hiawatha Kamene. Professor Hiawatha Kamene supposed to join us on Wednesday at 11 p.m. Okay, let's get right into the conversation. Good morning, Cecelia. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Ade. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I just had my coffee, so it's starting to kick in. I'm going to read your bio just for those who are new to you and to give them a little bit of info on who you are. And this doesn't capture everything, obviously, but Cecelia Waterman-Santiago is a former Wall Street marketer. Cecelia is happily in service of the heart as a Reiki master, certified yoga teacher, spiritual advisor, writer, photographer, and creator of holistic products. Cecelia has a nonprofit company named House of Rising Sun, which will be a residential group home for girls that have been sexually exploited. Cecelia is grateful for everything, as all is a blessing and all is very, very well. So, and if you want to, if you're interested in the holistic products, what is the website? Your website again?
It's avalaiwellness.com, and we can put a link, I guess, later on underneath. But Avalai, yes, wellness.com.
Great. So I'll put a link for everything. So I'm very excited for this conversation. I just read the book. Here's a proof, the 4 agreements. I even have notes in there if you look closely. So I did read it, and everything Don Miguel Ruiz talked about really resonated with me. And as I was reading the book, I just thought that it's so fitting that we do this interview, because you really embody the principles, that he's talking about. Just your presence and the wisdom that you share, is really a demonstration of the principles that he talks about in this book. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So where should we start? Where would you like to start the conversation?
Well, I guess we should probably tell them the 4 agreements.
Yeah.
And so the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word. And when he says impeccable, and im means without, and peccable in Latin, from what I read, means sin. So without sin. And when he says without sin, he means without sinning against yourself. And so when we are not impeccable with our word, we are sinning against ourselves. And when we lie to others, when we're deceitful to others, when we're not true to ourselves, we're sinning against ourselves. As we know, all that we put out into the universe returns to us. So if you are sending negative energy to someone, eventually that energy comes back to you. So what he's saying is, be impeccable with your word for your own benefit. So that's the first agreement, and that's what he builds upon. The first agreement is the most important agreement. That's the basis for the other three agreements. And the next agreement is, don't take anything personally. Everyone is living out their own dream, their own reality, their own history. And what is going on and what they say or do has nothing to do with you. It's all about what's going on with them. So, and then the next agreement is, don't assume. Ask the question. Get clarity. Almost always, when we assume, we're incorrect. So we think we know, and it's generally because that's how we've been taught. You know, we're afraid to ask the question, so we play back our experiences, and when this happened before, this is what it meant. Well, that's not always the case. So that's, you know, that's a very important agreement, I think, you know, because my first instinct is to go with what my mind tells me, and that's not necessarily right.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different way of thinking and a different way of being. And the last agreement is, always do your best. And to understand that your best will vary from minute to minute, from hour to hour, and from day to day. So those are the four agreements.
Right. Those are, and perhaps you could talk a little bit. I know that he sets up all of these agreements with given, really explaining what he calls, what does he call it? Domestication. So how we've been domesticated, which is another word for condition. That's his setup before even getting to the agreements. And is it it sounds like the conditioning that we've taken on, you know, that he's helping to bring to the surface, to kind of bring up to consciousness. And then is it that these agreements are to take the place of that conditioning?
Right. And in the book, he speaks about, are we truly free? Right? Are we truly free? And he says, no, we're not. When we're a child, as a small child, we were free. And you look at children and they do whatever they want to do. You know, they ask for what they want and they live freely, they play, they're happy. And we've been indoctrinated. We've been taught the rules, right? The judge tells us, there's the law that tells us we can't do this. You know, we can't, this is not right. But whose rules are those? In religion, we're given the commandments. So we're given a set of rules that we have to obey. And as we become adults, we can't do this because we've got to pay the bills. We can't buy this. We can't travel this place. We've got to save up and take care of everybody else. And maybe if we retire early, we can enjoy the rest of our lives. And he's saying to be free, to let those go, and to live freely as a person, as a spirit, as we're meant to be. So.
Yeah, a spirit versus a robot. It sounds like what you know, with this programming. You know, I've been called a robot before, by the way. So it's I have quite a bit of you know, I have my routine, and you know, I do things in a certain way, and little by little I'm starting to let go of that control, and it seems like that domestication or conditioning, as it starts at a early age in childhood, is because we are dependent on our parents. We seek that security, that love. So it sounds like that's the first agreement that we have taken on, that this is the way that things should be, and it limits our us being able to express our authentic selves,
Right,
and
right.
reaching that where we become like a carbon copy of some other person's idea or society's idea of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable.
And if you think about it, that's how people are controlled, right? So you give them rules and everyone follows the same pattern. No one steps out of line. If you step out of line, you go to jail or you get locked up or you get taken out of the way. And so you don't have people freely living and creating and doing the wonderful things that they could possibly do if they weren't controlled. So like
Yeah,
how can you fully be impeccable with your word, right? If you're worried about, like in some places of the world, you can't. Because if you do, if you speak your truth, you go to jail or you are killed. So, here, thankfully, we can say things, we can speak, we can have these conversations, but some places you can't. And he's saying that everyone should be free to be able to speak their truth and to live freely.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good segue into that first agreement. When you talked about being impeccable with your word, even when you started talking about it, my body just kind of clenched up a little bit because, and that's a good thing for me to realize. It's those areas that, I need some work in, that my body kind of reacts like, oh, that safety thing. Well, impeccable. And it's really I guess the interpretation that I put upon it, being impeccable in terms of how maybe I may be perceiving it, and not always consciously until now. I'm just talking about it, but being impeccable with your word means that, I'm not going to get love. I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to come against, get into conflict with another person, so, and all of that scares me. And there's that physical reaction of, oh no, and it seems like the easier way is just to kind of agree to things that I don't really want to do, or all those little self betrayals, and that adds up. And then for me, it contributes to this. It kind of justifies this feeling or this negative belief that I have about myself. That I'm not good enough, and this sort of thing.
Well, yeah, and that's very interesting because one of the things he says is that the first agreement is the hardest agreement. He does mention that, but it's the most important agreement. And practice, practice, practice. He says practice makes the master. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. So you continue to speak your truth. And I don't know if you've heard the saying, speak your truth, even if your knees are shaking or if your throat, your voice is shaking, speak your truth. And it comes down to that, just doing it, even if it's uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And perhaps taking some time out, to taking that pause to he might talk about this, or I'm just making it up, but It sounds like he also connects it with being responsible in terms of responding to what's going on within ourselves, and so
Yeah. Let's see. Read some of what he wrote. Uh, okay. I love that he says, okay, the first agreement and the most important of the four agreements is be impeccable with your word. The word is your power of creation, and that power can be used in more than one direction. So I love that he says that, because your word is your power, right? We create with our word. One word is your power of creation, and that power is used in more than one direction. One direction is impeccability, where the word creates a beautiful story, your personal heaven on earth. The other direction is misuse of the word, where the word destroys everything around you and creates your personal hell. So we don't realize it, but when we're not living in our truth, when we're not speaking our truth, we're setting up the basis for living in a hell. Eventually, things start to go this way instead of this way. So if this way is our light, is our good, is all the wonderful things that are here for us when we are living in our truth, when we're speaking our truth, when we're not, we're going this way. So we're not creating the world that we'd like to create or the life that we'd like to create. So, and he's saying that also, as he goes in to talk about gossip and how gossip is black magic. He talks about, because he's Celtic, so, he's native, and they speak about magic and energy and all of that. And he believes we're all magical beings. So you've got white magic here, which is good, and it's our truth. And then we have black magic here, which is gossip and wanting to cause others harm. And he gives the example of, it was a classroom situation and a professor, and someone saying this professor was awful, and then you taking the class, and then ultimately all of these things play in your mind. And I think the word he has for that is miote. It's a thousands of different things going on in our head. We call it busyness when we're trying to meditate, and you get all of these different thoughts going on in your mind. Well, he's saying that all of these things that are going on in our mind, right, all of the clutter, all of the baggage, keep us from our truth. So when we go, if we spread gossip, if we say, oh, this professor's awful, he's terrible. So in our mind, if someone tells you that, it's like casting black magic on you. And then you go into the class with that preset notion, and you think, oh, there he is. Look at him. I could see that he's just awful, without even really knowing. And then you continue to base unless somehow it shifts, which can also happen. You can shift it, something else can happen and shift that. But if you follow that dark magic and that dark trail, you may end up dropping the class. You may end up dropping out of something that you really needed, that was really offered to you. So that's the way he talks about it. He says, and that has sat with me for a long time, many years. I've always looked at gossip that way. And gossip is a way that many people use to try to make themselves feel better. So they talk about other people in a negative light so that they feel better about themselves. But it never truly works that way. It just doesn't, So you attract that negative energy back to you. And it's just a circle. So to free yourself is, if someone starts gossiping with you, you can change the conversation, or you can step away from the conversation. You absolutely do not have to participate. So I love that he definitely goes into depth about that. When being impeccable with your word, it means speaking from a place of love and truth, honesty, things that raise your vibration. You think about that in terms of energy and vibration. When we speak with love, we raise our vibration. Love vibrates at a higher level. It vibrates in the higher chakras, our heart, right? Our throat, our third eye, our crown, all of that is love. So, but when we speak negatively about someone or people, we're operating from the base chakras, and our root chakra manages our feelings of security and all is well and safety, all of that. So generally, if you are speaking negatively, it's because you're afraid. It's fear. It's fear. And so to cover our fear, look at me, I'm great, but look at him, he's awful, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's motivated by the fear. And as you were talking about the mental, I forget the term that
Myote. I
he,
think it's
yeah,
myote.
yeah, miote. It
Yeah.
sounds like a stepping into a fog. So all the you're looking at the world through this filter. That is made up of this negativity and untruth, and so what we are perceiving within ourselves and reflecting out into the world where we are creating. This is a reality that we're creating, and so that taking that time to first become aware of that and to speak from a place of love, as you said, of clarity, it sounds like, of honesty, manifests that, into the world. And it's, it's within, on a very practical level, I've found that this has worked very well with, people that I may have resentments towards, or when the mind, when we start to, just within ourselves, not even with someone else, oh, this person is this way, this person is that way. And when I notice the negative thoughts about the person, when I intentionally notice it, and then I speak positive words into them, this person is connected to infinite intelligence. They are reaching their full potential. They have abundance. They are overflowing with love, happiness, joy. It literally almost instantly it changes the way I perceive the person, and it changes the way that I'm feeling inside. So, it is really true, what you were talking about.
Yeah, and I look at it that way also. When I'm starting to feel negative about someone or something, um, maybe something happened, or I feel that someone said something that was disrespectful or did something to me, or maybe I felt like someone tried to sabotage me. Now, that's just my feeling, right? Doesn't mean it's necessarily true. I mean, even if you see it, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And then, even if it is true that they tried to do that, it's still not about you. It's about what's going on within them. Why would a person do what they do? There's a saying, hurt people, right? People in pain cause pain. So I like to think, when I go down that route and I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this person did this. Really? And I'm getting like working myself up. Then I like to take a beat and visualize that person as a small child, wounded child. And oftentimes, especially if it's a family member, or it's a friend, close friend, or something like that, I'll send energy. I'll send Reiki energy to the person for healing. And then I'll speak with God and the angels to bring in healing energy. And every time it gets healed, every time. because that's what we're putting out into the universe. Now, I could go down that road and say, they did this, now I'm going to do this. And then we just go down the rabbit hole and nobody comes out unscathed. Nobody. And it's like war. So that's not what I want in my life. I want peace and I want love. And I want the people that I care about to be healed and to be well. You know, so we all have things that we're struggling with, you know, that we need to heal. And so if this happens to me, it's happened for a reason. And so maybe I can offer some help in some way. You see?
Yeah. So it's being coming from a place of compassion rather than the need
Revenge.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
revenge or this power
Yeah.
dynamic that
Ego.
sometimes go on. Ego.
Ego
Yeah.
too. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you, do
Yeah.
that? And so, but instead come from a place of empathy and compassion and understanding that we're here. The people in our lives are in our lives for a purpose, you know? So, and I believe it's to help each other along the way, to teach each other.
Great. So let's go to the second agreement. That's what is it? Don't take yourself to.
Don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others do and say is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. And when you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. So, what others are doing is not about you. So that's when we really have to put the ego aside, because we're taught from a young age, right, in our conditioning, that you did this, you did that, you did this, you did that. That's bad. Don't do that anymore. And so we begin to think, oh, he's behaving like that because I did this. Like, why is he treating me like this? And really, it's not about us. It's what's going on with that person and for that person. And I like to think of, you can have two different people and have the same scenario and get two different responses, right? So a person could walk in and say, wow, you look like you gained some weight. And one person would say, what? Are you calling me fat? And just go nuts. And another person would say, yeah, I gained a couple of pounds, and I gained some weight. And, this COVID-19, everybody's eating, kind of thing. So it depends on what's going on inside of the person, right? We all handle things differently. We all receive things differently. And it depends on where we are in our awareness, in our development, our experiences, things that have shaped us along the way, the thoughts that are going on in our head, what we're telling ourselves, because we talk to ourselves all the time. And a lot of what we say to ourselves is not the most uplifting things. I'm too fat, I'm too old, I'm too thin, I'm too this, to that, when we are absolutely fine, we're absolutely enough, really.
Yeah, if that makes a lot of sense. If you have the tape running in your head, this I'm not good enough running in your head, and you're going throughout your day trying to prove that you're good enough. If someone says anything to you that even remotely, is critical, right away it's gonna trigger you if you're not conscious of that. That's the.
And if we say, and it reminds me of something that Don Miguel Ruiz said, is if we tell ourselves these stories and then someone comes along and says exactly what we're thinking, there it is. We've taken on that dark magic and made it our own. and sometimes it's very difficult to get rid of. And an interesting story is, as a child, I remember being at a friend's house and we were singing. We were singing to, I think, the Jackson Five or something. We were saying, dating myself, but we were singing to some music, and her mother came in and said, "Stop that noise. You guys sound terrible." Well, I think I was like, I had to be about 8 at the time. I was young. And I remembered from that day on, I thought, I'm going to sing. I did. And I did sing. And I sang and I made money singing. And, I became a singer, so that spark, it can take us a couple of ways. That could have shut my voice down, my throat chakra. It could have shut it down and I could have never sung again. And that happens to many people. What was going on for her had nothing to do with us, but we were too young to understand that. Something was going on within her. She didn't want to hear anything. It may not have even been the music. She just didn't want to have anything going on around her. She may have just wanted quiet. She was maybe stressed. And we took that in. My girlfriend, she probably never sang. I have never heard her sing. I don't know, but we used to love to sing. I kept singing. She did not. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like, and he mentioned this in the book, you have the choice at that moment to agree with what that person is giving you.
Yes.
And then it becomes, part of your reality, or you can make a different agreement. You don't even have to take it.
Right.
Did you send this woman a CD or anything later on in life?
No, I did. I had moved away and then she had passed away. And so I did not,
Yeah.
but I should have. And, I never brought it up again either. I don't think, did I ever? I rarely speak about that. You're probably the second person, and everyone who's listening, or this is the second time I'm actually talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a Stevie Wonder song. Yeah, because I love Stevie Wonder. That's what it was. It wasn't Jackson 5. It was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah. So I like this agreement. Don't take anything personally. And it points to that really nothing is really personal. We're living in a reality that, for the most part, most people's world are based off of concepts that we've learned, that we've been going back to how he sets up the book, these things that we agree to. So you have one person's version of reality, based off of these concepts that maybe doesn't match up with yours, but there's no real substance there. There's no real truth, no real value in it other than the value that we've agreed upon, and so it sounds like if we put the value in that, then we are going to get those results. It's going to show up in that way. It's going to have that much of an impact in our lives. And it sounds like with this woman, you just didn't put the value, you didn't attach a bunch of value onto what she said.
Well, what it did was motivated me to sing, to be like a good singer, So I think that's what, there was a stubbornness in me as well. As a child, I was pretty stubborn. And anyway, I won't go into that. But yeah, so I was like, well, I'm going to sing and I'm going to prove you wrong kind of attitude.
Yeah. And that's important, I think, for all of these agreements. And there needs to be a little bit of a rebel in us, to go
Yes.
against some of these
Yes.
things. Yeah.
Yes. And that's the truth too. We don't have to take on what other people try to give us. We don't have to take that as our agreement. We can let it go and say, one of the things that Don Miguel says in his book is, if someone gives me a compliment, I say thank you, but I don't give it much weight. If someone says, you're a horrible person, I don't give it much weight. If you tell me I'm great, I know I'm great. Okay, it's no big deal. If you tell me I'm awful, I'm not taking that. I know I'm wonderful. So we don't take on other people's agreements or other people's black magic, is what he was saying too. So
Yeah. And other people's projections,
other people's projections,
Yeah.
because they're living their dream, they're living in their world. People can tell you anything. And it reminds me of, and I don't know if your mom said this to you, but if she's listening, Lydia, but my mother used to say, so if everyone jumped off the roof, you jump off the roof too? You know? So we don't have to listen to what other people say or do. We can go our own way. So, yeah.
Great. So let's go into, is there anything else in this agreement that you wanted to?
Let's see, I took a whole bunch of notes. Okay. Hmm. Well, I really like when he said, even when a situation seems so personal, like we
Mhm.
feel like this is true, they're directing it toward us because of this, and or even if they tell us you did this, even if others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. What they say, what they do, and the opinions they give are according to the agreements they have in their own minds. Taking things personally makes you easy prey for these predators, the black magicians. They can hook you easily with one little opinion and feed you whatever poison they want. And because you take it personally, you eat it up. But if you do not take it personally, you are immune to the middle of hell. So I like that. So it's like you free yourself.
Yeah.
You free yourself when you don't take things personally.
Hmm. And that's great. And I like when he talks about the how we sort of attract what it is, the negative belief that we may have. So other people may reflect that. And in one passage, he says, if you have the need to be abused, you will find it easy to be abused by others.
Right.
Likewise, if you are with people who need to suffer, something in you makes you abuse them. It is as if they have a note on their back that says, please kick me.
Yeah. So with awareness, we cannot do that. With awareness, we can say, oh, so this person wants to be abused. This person wants to be taken advantage of, but I'm not going to do that because that doesn't serve me. Right. Whether you believe in karma or energy, you don't want to put that energy into the universe and have it returned.
Yeah, and it's also getting us out of, it's sounds like it's putting the responsibility and power back to ourselves rather than being a victim when we're at the on the other end of this. We can say, what is it, is there something within me that I'm attracting this sort of person because I see this pattern running through it throughout my life,
Right,
and
right, right. Are we sending that message into the universe? Absolutely.
which goes back to being impeccable with your word and
Absolutely.
yeah.
See, that's how he builds. All of these other agreements are built on the first agreement. So, and that they all relate back to being impeccable with your word.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now shall we move into the number 3?
Sure. The third agreement, don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. So don't assume. You know, there's that saying, when we assume, we make an of you and me. Okay, so we've all heard that, and it's basically true. I believe when you assume, oftentimes you're wrong. And it's happened to me many times. So
Someone
just
once
ask the
told, yeah, someone once told me the antidote to pride is ask. Yeah, ask a question.
ask the question.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I think we don't because we're afraid. We're afraid to ask the question. We're afraid of the answer. We're afraid of looking ill-informed or looking ignorant or stupid. There's no such thing as a silly question. There absolutely is no such thing as a silly question. And I think that's important, you know, when we're interacting with children, they understand, ask the question, because you look far worse when you act based on an assumption that is totally inaccurate.
Yeah, and I think especially in the world we live in today, where it looks like we're running off of assumptions. There's already been a script written, like one script versus another script,
Oh,
and it's like everybody's in their own world. There's no questions. I think too, I don't think there's anything wrong with conflict, but I think conflict could be healthy if we approach it with in the spirit of I don't know, in the spirit of openness, in the spirit of with the intention to learn something new. You know, so if I'm coming to you and I'm upset about something you said, I can say, well, this is how I feel about it. This is what I thought you meant. You know, what is it that you meant, you know?
right. Right. And I think coming to the person with the feeling inside, like you really don't know, like not coming charging to the person and saying, you made me feel like this, and I want to know what you meant by that, you know, but just coming as a child would come out of curiosity. I don't really understand, you know, but we've been so indoctrinated and we've been taught to be defensive, to defend ourselves if they do something wrong. And we perceive, because of past experiences, that certain scenarios and situations mean certain things. So if somebody acts this way, it means this, when that doesn't always mean that. It's, you know, it's not always true. It's an assumption. We're assuming that this behavior means this, but that's not true for everyone. We're all different.
Yeah.
So let's see. One of the things he says in the third agreement, um, not taking anything personally gives you immunity to the interaction. Oh, I'm reading the wrong thing. Oh, okay. Don't make assumptions. Making assumptions and then taking them personally in the beginning is the beginning of hell in this world. Almost all of our conflicts are based on this, and it's easy to understand why. Our assumptions are nothing more than lies that we are telling ourselves. This creates a big drama for nothing because we don't really know if something is true or not. Not taking it personally gives you immunity in the interaction that you have with other people. And not making assumptions gives you immunity in the interaction that you have with yourself, with your voice of knowledge, or what we call thinking. So making assumptions is all about thinking. We think too much, and thinking leads to assumptions.
Yes.
I love the way he writes that. I just do. We have so much noise in our head, and it's filled with the miote, and we believe that we know because this voice. Oh, and one of the other things he talks about, which I thought was really interesting, is that because he's Toltec and he's a shaman and he's spiritual and all of that, he says that sometimes the voices in your head are not your own.
That's a good.
Yeah. So we're making assumptions sometimes based on something that it has nothing to do with us, and the noises in our head are the voices, oftentimes, of the past, what people have told us along the way. All of these things are going through our mind. And so when we're presented in a certain situation, these things come up and we think, we start like a little computer trying to figure out which one fits, which works. And so we come out and we say, aha, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're bringing up. It's what they call in psychology confirmation bias. So like grabbing something to confirm some sort of inner reality, that we have, some sort of belief, and also how it can happen to a whole group of people, a whole culture. We assume certain things. A part of what I've been looking into a lot is for my own my own inner work, and how I was raised in a culture, me being half African American and Indian, and being indoctrinated in a culture and in a society where at school I only saw certain images in the book and on TV. It was just a European sort of filter that I was looking at the world through, and just assuming that is what greatness is, and I'm not that, so I must be the other. I'm in some way inferior, and because I put all the pieces together, and that thing kind of was embedded in my DNA. And as you said, it can be passed along throughout generations, and through a whole group of people, and just recognizing that. And a lot of what he talks about, I think one of the prerequisites is first becoming conscious of these things, or else you're just going to just play on it. And he had the great fortune of having that big awakening moment when he talks about the stars and everything. So and maybe a lot of us don't have those such big moments, but I think taking time to look within, and becoming conscious of what we're not, that conditioning, and then we can see all the stuff that's been running us without us really even being conscious of it, you know.
Yeah. Well, he does say that awareness is the first step. It's the first step. So, and awareness is the first step when you're trying to heal and we're trying to make a change. We have to notice something first to make the change.
So let's see. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the third?
Let's see. I'll just read another excerpt from the book. Humans have a need to explain and justify everything. We have a need for knowledge, and we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know. We don't care whether the knowledge is true or not, truth or fiction. We believe 100% in what we believe, and we go on believing it because just having knowledge makes us feel safe. There are so many things that the mind cannot explain. We have all these questions that need answers. But instead of asking questions, when we don't know something, we make all sorts of assumptions. If we just ask questions, we won't have to make assumptions. It's always better to ask and to be clear. So I love that.
That's beautiful. So much packed into that.
Yeah. Yeah. So as humans, it's like we have to know. You know, we've got to have the answer. We've got to know. And it's just simpler, really, to just ask.
And one of the deepest things I find, and part of what I think are many of us, you know, I was going to say, I think all of us, this is what all of our journey is about, but I don't know, you know, I could only speak for myself.
We don't want to assume.
Yeah, I don't want to assume, but the question of who am I, you know, is such, really hits to the core of a lot of these things, like not even make an assumption about who I am, you know, and that and he points to that how that desire to know, or that being faced with that uncertainty comes into direct conflict with that part of our brain that seeks to certainty. You know, that's what the part of our brain was developed, you know, to it needs to know, it needs certainty, you know, to be able to feel safe. So it's not like and that's why it takes, I think he talks about this, it takes a lot of courage and stepping outside of that sort of you know, because we're not living in the jungles anymore. We're not like being chased by lions and tigers and having to, you know, watch our every step. You know, we're not under attack. You know, we don't have to be where most of us are living, you know, within four walls. We have a roof over our head, you know, but we still have this brain that needs to know, you know, and but how could we know this vast mystery that we're, you know, that is ourselves, and that is the universe and everything else.
Exactly. So that brings us to the fourth agreement. Always do your best. And let's see. Don Miguel Ruiz says, your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. So I love that he says, always do your best, and that your best will change. And your best can actually change moment by moment, depending on what's going on in your mind, depending on how you're feeling, depending upon what has just happened to you. So if you get bad news, clearly you won't be able to do what you would normally do if everything was just perfect in your world. So if you're sick, your best will be different than when you're healthy and well and strong. So, but just doing your best allows you to be free of self-blame and self-criticism, self-abuse, as he says. And we say, I did my best, and that's all I could do. And that's it. And so that basically kind of solidifies all of the agreements. So as be impeccable with your word is the foundation, that is like the top of it. And it just brings everything together. And that's the thing he said, if you're doing your best all the time, right, then you're integrating being impeccable with your word. You're integrating not assuming. You're integrating not taking things personally, right? You're doing your best to do all of these things. So, and when you do that, then you can't blame yourself. And it may vary. So you may not be able to stick to the agreements. You may not be able to always keep your word, but you try again. You don't give up. Okay, so I slipped up. It's like if you're on a diet. I made a mistake and ate some cake. I'll start again tomorrow, but you do your best. You know, you do your best. And
Yeah.
once you do that, and really, that's all we really can do here is our best. Yeah.
And you talked about that self-judge, that's something. I can notice the self-judge within myself. Even during, our conversation, it's come up. Well, you didn't think of the right thing, or this didn't come out right, or that didn't come out right, or, the other one part of that is I guess there's an idea of how I think the world should be, and when it doesn't appear to be that way, it triggers this feeling of not being safe, and but on the other hand of that, I don't really even have a clear idea of what my idea of how it should be is. There's no real substance to that. It's not even real. So that's, but yes, always do your best is important.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, so if you just do your best, there is no way you can judge yourself. If you don't judge yourself, there is no way you are going to suffer from guilt, blame, and self-punishment. If you have done your best and your inner judge tries to judge you, you've got the answer. I did my best. There are no regrets. That is why we always do our best. It's not an easy agreement to keep, but this agreement is really going to set you free.
Yeah.
To me, I think that doing your best in a given situation is, for me, I think one of the things that I resonate more with, or it resonates with me, in that in most things, I try to do my best. I mean, and to be honest, there are times when I don't try to do my best. I just say, but one of the things he mentions in the book is when you do what you enjoy doing, you usually do your best, right? So he talks about people going to work and working 9 to 5 just to pay the rent, to pay their bills, and they're not going to do their best because they're not happy doing it. You have to do what makes you happy. And if you're doing your best, right, See, it's almost like a catch 22 situation. If you're doing your best, then you're going to be happy doing it. He mentions that too. So maybe the thing is for us to just do what we love.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sometimes doing my best used to equate to muscling my way through, like doing things obsessively and you know, like and not knowing when to take a step back.
Right. Well, he mentions that too. He says sometimes doing your best, doing too much is not your best because it's too much. So that's a good point. So muscling your way through, maybe your best would have been doing it a different way. Maybe that would have been your best.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's certainly a new way to look at it, and it seems like it opens up room for creativity to flow, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. And awareness to look at what we're doing as we're doing it, and ask the question, am I doing my best here? And if I'm not, then why aren't I? Maybe change needs to occur.
And what does best mean? What does what is, because he's telling us also how we've been programmed to think in a certain way, and how does one find out what their best is? Like I said, like my best, I used to think in the way that maybe a parent, I perceived that for example, my dad's a professor. He always has a huge stack of book, and he works literally writing and reading for like hours. I don't see him getting up from the table. So I interpret it as that to be, that's doing your best. So when I'm doing something, if I'm not doing it that long, I feel like, well, I'm not doing my best. So obviously I've had a lot of failures throughout. I always felt like a failure because I never did it to that, it's just, and so that's what I sunk into my head, as that's the best. I have to, the way he would say, work hard, do this. A little bit of a story, a side note of that's related to this is, we used to live in a house where the driveway was steep, and it was cold where we lived in the winters, very cold winters, and the driveway would ice over. And he would say, okay, Ade, go out there and make a path down the driveway so that people can walk up and down. And the ice was literally like this thick. And he'd give me this little shovel, and I was like 15 years old, and I go like, hit the ice, and a little bit of ice would come up, and I'd go back upstairs and say, Dad, this ice is not coming up. And he'd come down and he'd tick, 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 and make enough room that he would reach the driveway, and then he would say, okay, just do that and keep doing it and do it and do it. And I would just do it with resentment and bitterness and just tick, 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 and like, so that translated into my best. So that's what I felt like my best is.
And so, since you weren't enjoying it and you were resentful, you probably weren't doing your best. I'm gonna guess, but I would believe that doing our best varies from moment to moment and from person to person. Right. So your best is different than my best, and so we alone have to figure out what our best is. So I don't believe there's any hard science to it, but within yourself, you have to figure out, am I doing my best? Could I have done better? Could I have done better? You ask the question.
And I guess we could leave some room for that too, like to say, okay, maybe I could have done better next time, or
But it was good enough for today.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a filmmaker, watching a film I've done, and there's always a few little things that it could have done better, and it's always, and I know I did my best, but it's sometimes hard just to let go of those things that I wished I would have improved upon. And
Yeah, and I think the idea of saying I did my best is to free us from that, from blaming. So, even if you did your best and then you say, "Oh, I could have done a little better." Well, no, you did the best that you could in the given situation with everything that was involved, with time, with the way you were feeling, with how because sometimes you're dealing with difficult actors. So, you did the best. So maybe you could have looked, or it could have looked a little different. It could have been, maybe the picture could have been clearer. There could have been something that you could have done a little better. But given the situation and the circumstances, and with everything involved, perhaps you did the best that you could at that time.
yeah, and it was the actors actually. I'll blame them.
That's because I wasn't there.
So I think we've reached the 1 hour 15 minute
Oh my God.
mark. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to go into in terms of the agreements or this fourth agreement?
No, I think, let's see. Oh, one of the things that Don Miguel Ruiz says, if you break an agreement, begin again tomorrow and again the next day. It will be difficult at first, but each day will become easier and easier until someday you will discover that you are ruling your life with the four agreements, and you will be surprised at the way your life has been transformed. So I think that's a good way to close it out. But just try, and then try again tomorrow, and then the next day, and the
Yeah.
next day. And it becomes easier in time.
Yes. Yeah. That's progress, not perfection, as
Right.
they say.
The work in progress. Yes, the work's in progress.
Yeah. Hard
So
for a perfectionist, though. Yes.
exactly. And we let go of some of that.
Yeah.
Did you want to read? Do you want to read a prayer? Or did
Yeah.
you read it? You want to read it?
Either I can read it, or do you have it in front of you, or the there's a bunch of them in the back. Um, I just read the first one yesterday, which was nice, but I'm sure you're more familiar with them, so pick whatever one you feel. So, folks, this is in the back of the book, The Four Agreements. He has a bunch of prayers, which are really nice.
Do you have the
Well,
book in front of you?
yeah, I do.
So pick one and I'll just read it if you'd like.
How about the first one?
What page is that?
131.
Okay, I should put on my glasses. This is why I can't see. I literally can't see. Okay.
So it's 131 in my copy of the book. I don't know if it's the same with you.
It probably is, yes. Okay. Um,
And actually, you can skip to where the prayer actually starts on the next page, 132. It says,
Prayer for freedom. Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. I like that one. All right. Today, Creator of the universe, we ask that you come to us and share with us a strong communion of love. We know that your real name is love, that to have a communion with you means to share the same vibration, the same frequency that you are, because you are the only thing that exists in the universe. Today, help us to be like you are, to love life, to be life, to be loved. Help us to love the way you love, with no conditions, no expectations, no obligations, without any judgment. Help us to love and accept ourselves without any judgment. Because when we judge ourselves, we find ourselves guilty and we need to be punished. Help us to love everything you create unconditionally, especially other human beings, especially those who live around us, all of our relatives and people whom we try so hard to love. Because when we reject them, we reject ourselves. And when we reject ourselves, we reject you. Help us to love others just the way they are, with no conditions. Help us to accept them the way that they are, without judgment. Because if we judge them, we find them guilty. We blame them, and we have the need to punish them. Today, clean our hearts of any emotional poison that we have. Free our minds from any judgment so that we can live in complete peace and complete love. Today is a very special day. Today, we open our hearts to love again so that we can tell each other, I love you, without any fear, and really mean it. Today, we offer ourselves to you. Come to us. Use our voices. Use our eyes. Use our hands. Use our hearts to share ourselves in communion of love with everyone. Today, Creator, help us to be just like you. Thank you for everything that we receive this day, especially for the freedom to be who we really are. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. And, just want to say thank you. Much appreciation to you for, really deeply for all the service you do, because I see you're always spreading light and love and yourself with everyone. So I just want to say, a big thank you for you. And I have so much love for you and appreciation for you. And
thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for getting up each day and sharing a meditation with the world. I appreciate you. I am grateful for you, and I love you.
Love you too. And I'll receive that. Thank you.